Welcome, everybody, to the Resilient Minds podcast. I'm very grateful today to welcome an amazing speaker, an incredible person that I've had the pleasure of meeting in Madeira, in Portugal, just recently, Mr. Jeff Booth. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be here.
So before we get into the depth of, the magic that you're bringing to the world and the uniqueness that you're doing, can you just share a little bit about your background? I know, like, you just came out with a profound book, The Price of Tomorrow. I know you haven't just come out with it, but it's really a magic that I'm excited to get deeper into. Just share a little insight for anybody that may not know you or have an awareness of you.
Yeah, I would, just like anybody. I actually dropped out of school to be an entrepreneur. Started in real estate, then went into building, and then I saw, as the internet was early, I saw an opportunity to solve a problem for others with the internet combined with technology, where it was going to create a company that could solve the building supply issue in the world. That company became pretty robust growth company in Canada. We were early on the insights of AI. We were and it led me, all of these steps just led me to and by the way, many mistakes along the way, and where I realized through those mistakes, it wasn't an outside world conspiring against me. It was typically me conspiring against the world. So learned at each different juncture, led me to write the book Price of Tomorrow, because I could see the technology was moving faster and faster, and I couldn't resolve the paradox in my own mind of why prices weren't falling at that rate when everything was the free market was deflationary and technology was making faster deflation. I couldn't resolve the paradox why prices were going up. And it was something I was talking about for 10 years while I was building the company. And it just became this gnawing thing at me, where I wanted to understand, resolve that paradox. So I did the work to understand what the existing system looked like, what the monetary system looked like, and why it was opposite to the abundance that should flow to us from technology. And I didn't want to write the book. I tried to get other people to write the book. I tried to convince others, and then I just realized I had to write the book, because it was bugging me so much. But it was bugging me that people couldn't see this. For people on the technology side that were talking about everything that was great in technology, that it was going to divide society faster because it wasn't meshed with the economic laws that would flow to society. And so that led me to write the book. And through the book, through the process, I'd owned a little bit of Bitcoin before that. But it was more of I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it. And then through the writing of the book, I just realized that Bitcoin could be, or was, the potential to resolve this conflict in a way that was the best path forward for humanity. And then but even at the end of that book, there was only one mention of Bitcoin. It was at the end. It was of the book, and it was a plausible solution, or a possible solution. And then I just became more and more convinced through work on trying to disprove my hypothesis, honestly, trying to say where Bitcoin would fail, where it would be killed, where I realized that my probability of failure of Bitcoin at the time, I had assigned a probability of failure of about 5%. Even though I knew the existing financial system was 100% probability of failure, it was ironic that I still saw risk in the 5% failure, even though I was living in the 100% failure. And I realized all of these hypocrisies in my own thinking as I started to understand Bitcoin deeper and deeper. And it wasn't Bitcoin had a failure probability of 5%. It was my implied belief about that failure that I imposed on it. And through more and more work trying to disprove this hypothesis, I came to the point that this is the solution. I wanted to spend all of my time moving forward on this solution and helping expand it.
You gave so much beauty there and so much wisdom in such a short period of time. Just basing from what I hear, a lot of depth of the importance of humanity, of conflict, of disproving a perspective that is been manipulated or passed on to us, and then even like checking in with yourself to get curious about what's real and what's not. Interesting, like as a boy, I always would think, who am I? Like, why do I exist? What is it that outside of society doesn't make sense, that I'm so disconnected from this bullshit story and it doesn't feel good? And I realized that I needed to really pay more attention to this feeling. So as you were writing the book, and as you were getting into more of this like understanding of humanity and the conflict, what was it that were some of these deep findings that allowed you to challenge this 100% failure versus this 5% probability? And what was your discovery? Because I love it. Like I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like your perspective is that this is all a discovery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a discovery. And this discovery has never existed. So if the discovery has never existed, and you probably heard my speech in Madeira, right? So if the discovery has never existed, then it would be normal that all of our history books and all of our priors and all of our knowledge, what our grandparents thought, what their grandparents thought, what this book read about monetary theory, what it said about gold, how economies are constructed, how political systems are. It would make sense that if this discovery is something that is different, then all of our priors about everything before would have error codes in them. Winners write the history books. We never had something like this that was decentralized and secured. I never had something like Bitcoin. So when I see people making the path through understanding Bitcoin and carrying their baggage on how the system has to work, because it's always worked that way, it makes perfect sense to me. And I don't fault them for that. It's just the path that they're on. And because I was on the same path, you have to almost unlearn a whole bunch of the things that you knew, and you have to take the new rules that from this discovery that are imposed to society and recreate what will happen in the future from the new rules, rather than drag all the existing into this baggage. So my process in going through that was the same process that I see through, and probably your process, and probably every single Bitcoiner's process, and kind of going deeper and deeper and deeper, finding truth in what that meant. And it meant you had to unlearn a whole bunch of things that were formerly true in the world we lived in. And that change, you can imagine, is chaotic because each person finds it at a different time. They think something. Once you understand Bitcoin, like you obviously do, like I do, you're never going back to the other system, no matter what, right? And so then people say it looks like a religion, and it's not a religion. It's just I'm going to live in an honest world. I'm going to live on an honest ledger, period. And I'm going to do everything I can to enhance that honest ledger. If that's a religion, okay, you can call me religious, but I see the dishonesty in the ledger today. I see the impact on people that they don't see, and I've chosen differently, and I've chosen to move all of my time, or as much time as I can, in promoting the honest ledger. If that's radical to some people, I would ask them to say, why is that radical?
Mm-hmm. I would love to, just for anybody that's listening, and the importance of this curiosity, what's dishonest ledger and what's an honest ledger. I think this is super important because one thing that and before you go there, I just want to highlight to anybody that's also listening, Napoleon Hill talks in his book Laws of Success about the divine economy. And a lot of it's like even Tony, he's give more than you ever expect to receive. Like these are some of these nuances that not a lot of us are listening to, but this divine economy is something that has not necessarily been available to a lot of people. And what I love about Bitcoin is that it's the vehicle that makes it happen. It's the vehicle that brings it to life. And so this is something that I believe is super important. So maybe from that perspective, to understand the difference between the dishonesty ledger and the honesty ledger, just so that we can paint that picture, Jeff, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, and maybe so I don't, because I'm on so many podcasts, your audience and your podcasts, how would you kind of relative to new Bitcoiners, existing Bitcoiners, where does that?
I would say new Bitcoiners to the ones that are now, but extremely aware. So very, very aware of themselves and their responsibilities here. So new people that are like wanting a vehicle, wanting to step into a space of, okay, this is something that they can bring their energy to because they know who they are at a deep level.
Okay. So, so if you lived I'm going to start at a higher level. The free market is the natural state of the free market is deflation. And most people don't know that because they think they live in a free market and they don't live in a free market. And there is no free market if you manipulate money. So, but the natural state of the free market is deflation. And then, and a lot of people will nod at that and then go right on to living on the other side of that. Yep, that's true. So first, let's construct why is that true? Because you use things that give you more value. So you trade with people all over the world, and you only pick things that give you more value. And if you picked things that gave you less value all the time, then it could be inflationary. But if you pick things that give you more value, this podcast we're on gives you more value. That's why you chose it. If there was a competing version for $300 a month, you would choose something else. And so you can see by your actions and entrepreneurs trying to solve problems, you constantly create more and more value for society. And then society benefits by those prices falling to society, and the entire world gets richer. It literally, you'd live in abundance. We can't measure that because the system we live in is a credit-based system. And if you allowed, when people hear deflation is bad, they're conflating two things. Deflation is bad for a credit-based system because the credit can't be repaid because because things turn into free. So there's less money to pay for the credit. So the credit explodes and it becomes insolvent. But if the entire system is based on that credit, it becomes insolvent like that and everything fails. So they're conflating two different things. They're conflating deflation. They should, instead of saying deflation is bad, and ask yourself, when have prices going down for you been bad? Right? It's always good. They're saying deflation is bad for a credit-based system. And we've constructed a credit-based system globally that is already insolvent. So what that means is you have to manipulate the ledger, the who owns what, and how and what that looks like by printing more and more monetary units to make prices go up and unnaturally. And the output of that is it steals the productivity that should flow to society, all of society, all 8 billion people on this planet. It steals that and it concentrates it in very few people. And so you could just say that dishonest ledger, it isn't a political system. It isn't it's all political systems on top of the dishonest ledger are control systems that are really about who gets more of the spoils that is stolen from you. And so when I say honest ledger and what the discovery of what Bitcoin is for the first time in history, we had something that was outside of control of it was decentralized and secure. And I like to look at it as it's a decentralized, it's open permissionless, decentralized, secure protocol that is bounded by energy. So it's bounded by physics and creating more energy abundance by its very nature. So that is so different than a world that essentially is not bounded by energy. It's bounded by more and more pieces of paper that are just created to make you chase more and more actions within the try to get you to work harder and harder and harder. And prices are rising faster and faster and faster when they shouldn't be. And it's all on a belief system. If you want a religion, it's all on a belief system that is it's okay to manipulate money that steals from other people. So you have a dishonest ledger versus an honest ledger, and that is kind of the transition of our time, right? As more and more people move to the honest ledger, the world changes. The mere reflection of what would society look like on top of an honest ledger, it would look like our conversation in Madeira. It would look like all of what you feel in Bitcoin and all of these beautiful people building honestly for the future in service of everybody. And what would the world look like on a dishonest ledger? Who would win? Who would lose? And you could see where your actions are, where you spend your time will be proportionate to how you feel. You're actually not measuring the world right now. I believe that the world's actually a reflection of your own consciousness rather than any belief system in that. So if you're living and spending all of your time making the existing system stronger that's based on a dishonest ledger, you're really playing prisoner's dilemma, thinking you're gaining more, but everybody is losing to it. So the entire system is getting weaker through that. Whereas in Bitcoin, it's, and I know this might be very deep depending on where people are on their journey, but Bitcoin, that discovery, that open, permissionless, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, creating an energy abundance, is a new layer for society, all of society to build on top of, and nobody can stop it. It's an honest ledger.
And because it's so honest and because it's so principle based, I really believe that a lot of people that have done the work within themselves and discover the level of responsibility that Bitcoin and its development is bringing to the table, there's still such a small awareness of it. And I get fascinated because, I've been grateful to get to know a lot of people in the communities, and they're just unaware of what system monetarily, like what vehicle can they use. And I believe that the more people understand how, like when I was in Madeira, and how big everybody is thinking and how big and responsible everybody is willing to step up to the table. And there's people of brilliance in different fields and different, backgrounds and different responsibilities. And they're doing this as a team. It's easy to reach out and put this piece together and figure out this solution here and navigate this experience. And that is something that, I shared openly, is like, I've been seeking a community that is really able to and responsible enough to think that big. And I believe that, we do this as a family. And I know that there's people even now, the more that I'm talking about economics and getting curious even more about the Bitcoin, people are reaching out to me and they're talking about crypto and Ethereum and all these other things. Oh, you should check this out, Eric, and this out. And I say no. So maybe there's an opportunity where you can share why is crypto and Ethereum and all these other technologies have been created. And like from my understanding, my research, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ethereum also did something in the past where it changed the system, it changed the block. So maybe you can go into the depth of knowledge, because just so people are interested, because they're like, oh yeah, this system's gold backed and this is silver backed and this is and there's so many things that are coming from this that I believe that you can explain this a lot better than I can.
Yeah. So if you said money was just information describing what you really want, right? Because you don't want more pieces of paper. You want the things or the hope or the whatever you want for your family that money describes. So it's just information describing that. So if you had misinformation in money by creating more and more money, then as a byproduct, then everybody in the world, if they were in that system, would be living with more and more misinformation. And as you automated misinformation with technology, it would be totally normal to expect people to be confused with everything they looked at because it was all based on misinformation. And they would be totally sure that their pocket of information was right and that other person's was wrong, because by doing that, the algorithms actually make more money. So remember, if that system looks like that and you live in that system, then it would be even way more confusing to get to where we're getting to. And by the way, I take that really seriously, because it also means that some of the things that I might think are conflated by the same thing. And so I take that very deep to understand where and why I might also be suspect, because if everyone in the world that you're looking at is, and then you'd have to turn a mirror around and say, am I? And so now if we get into, and before I go here, I'm just, because I'm going to only do it at this level. And so people should go to my website and they should read jeffbooth.ca. They should read Finding Signal in a Noisy World. And don't just read it once, read it 6 times. Because it'll so challenge your assumptions, but it'll build it in a first principles discipline. Because I was asked this question so many times, and there was no way to be able to describe it in detail. So I had to put my thoughts to why Bitcoin is so different and why it'd be totally natural that everybody would be confused by it. So, but I still haven't, and that's become one of the very referenced pieces in Bitcoin, and I still haven't had a challenge to it that holds any weight. There's no challenge. So I put it out there so people, if they didn't believe that, or they could try to poke holes in that they could challenge it, and there's still nothing in that. So I would ask your listeners to spend some time on that article. I'll briefly touch on it from two.
And I'll make sure I put it in the show notes as well, just so that anybody.
So I'll briefly touch on it. The first of all, we see way more companies than we do technologies, than we do protocols. So companies come around all the time. Technologies like electricity or blockchains or AI come around less often, and protocols come around very, very rarely. The internet is a protocol, and the internet is a protocol that was TC, and the definition of a protocol is that the first layer of the protocols come in layers, and they come in layers and they do one narrow thing, very narrow, and they can't do everything because there's trade-offs. And the trade-offs, while people think the protocol can't do anything because of the trade-offs, they create all these other things, right? And then the next layer comes on top of the protocol after it sufficiently hardens and nothing can change it. Then the next layer is built. And because nothing is built upon it, everybody misrepresents, because they're looking at the world through companies and technologies. They think, oh, this thing has to do this, and they create more of the technologies. And the protocols come deliberately, slowly, and they ossify. So they get harder and harder and harder to change. And then the next layer comes in. And the next layer comes in, and it does something so different. And it does trade-offs to the first layer, but every layer talks to the layer below it. So it captures all of this. So if you were looking at Bitcoin through this lens, and Bitcoin was this, and then you have to add what's called the blockchain trilemma. And so a blockchain can do 2 of 3 things on a layer. So let's say layer 1, it can do decentralization, security, or scalability, but it can only choose 2 of 3. So if you were looking through this lens, and in 2015, 2004, Bitcoin started in 2009, and every year stronger and stronger and more decentralized and secure. and every year got more and more decentralized and secure. And that meant all of the people holding Bitcoin, because it was an honest ledger, it was repricing the world slowly. It appeared they were getting rich. Then there would be a massive incentive to be able to create another Bitcoin, right? A free market incentive. It's staggering because you had something that was a discovery that changed that for the first time in history, that you had decentralization and security together. We always had to have essentially Magna Carta or Constitution, that the institution protected our laws, but then money was always superordinate to the institution. So money always got changed to, and the institutions ended up hurting us rather than protect throughout time. So now you had something decentralized and secure, and you didn't need the institution. That would be a big deal in history. You could hold it yourself. Huge deal. Never before seen. So a whole bunch of people get rich on that, and you fast forward every year, they're getting richer and richer. And just the human condition, because it can only do, it traded off decentralization and security, and it can't scale. So it can only do 5 to 7 transactions a second on the base layer. It would be totally normal in this world that misinformation and people getting more and more rich in this by being on the honest ledger, that some of those people and others would say, I'm going to create a better Bitcoin. Right? Totally normal. And so how would they create a better Bitcoin? So there's really 3 choices. 1, copy the exact code and create another coin like Dogecoin that has the same features, so exactly the same utility, decentralized and secure. But because it started later, it has less decentralization and less security, but the exact same utility. So you have to ask, why would anybody use that long term? Because if the one had more and more greater decentralization security and it had the same utility. So you can see, okay, that take out that use case, that would never work. It might be work for quick buck, quick trading, but it would never work long term. Now let's use a different example. I'm going to solve scalability, but I have to sacrifice decentralization or security. So I'm going to solve scalability and I'm going to sacrifice decentralization. That would look like Ethereum. So Ethereum Foundation and all the changes that you're talking about in Ethereum is because of that, because they have to sacrifice that, and it has to be centralized to be able to offer more functionality to scale. And so now you have, and it's ironic that you have decentralized finance, that people saying DeFi on top of something centralized. So then a whole bunch of entrepreneurs build on top of something. Essentially, they're building on top of quicksand, because this always has to change, and it has to change in service of the people that own this, and that's what the foundation would look like. That makes the changes. So you can see fully by even looking backwards why that would happen over time. And then, or your Solana or something else, and you sacrifice security and you get hacks all the time. So all of these blockchains, remember, we see more companies than technologies, and we see protocols very, very rarely. All of these would be totally natural, and it'd be really confusing for people because they see companies more often. And the incentives around the dishonest money is promoting all of these things, and it's just everywhere. And they don't understand how protocols happen, because protocols don't come around very often. And so that goes on, and Bitcoin becomes more and more decentralized. And all of the attacks, it can't scale, it can't do this. And all of those actually are right attacks. They're in that way. They can't scale in the way that the people want them to. Bitcoin didn't offer the functionality that other people wanted to build on top of it. So they built other things to build on top of. But the cost of those other things building on top, either centralized or insecure. So all of those things are true, and there's nuance in there. And then other entrepreneurs build on top of those coins that now they have an economic interest to try to promote the coin, because otherwise their business fails. So you have massive more confusion. And then the second layer comes on top of Bitcoin, because it's ossified. It's so hardened it hardens and hardens and hardens, and there's no attack vectors. It gets more and more decentralized and secure. And then the second layer, like Lightning, gets built on top. And now you have a scaling layer that is growing exponentially, that is growing faster than the internet on top of Bitcoin, that every 10 minutes comes back down to Bitcoin. And then you'll have another layer. And remember, you can't see what's available on the next layer until it's already there, and entrepreneurs go make use of those other layers. So it would be totally normal to, if you didn't see all of this coming, it would be totally normal to say, I need my thing to work, and I need it to work. I need to change the base layer to make my thing work. So through those very simple examples, you can see why it looks the way it looks like and why people are so confused. And what I would say is, if Bitcoin doesn't change at all, not to say that the base layer won't change a little bit or in service, because we control it as nodes, right? But if it didn't change at all, it's actually a foregone conclusion that all of these things can be solved on the second, third, fourth layers. And we're going to build an entire new stack that is a new peer-to-peer internet that's bounded by energy. And we're just early in that process, and people can't see it because they're confused with what's happening.
Yeah, and very infused with what's happening, and almost stuck in that perspective. I really love how you talked about decentralization and secure, and the focal point of how Bitcoin is unique to the differences out there. And I'd love to go deeper into the importance of that, because especially when it's bounded by energy, and the importance of bounding it by energy, and how it's our responsibility to then secure that network, not just from mining, but like also behind what's on top of mining or underneath mining, so that as a result, we're actually then taking care of the network, securing it, and then really creating that long term for our next generation, for our future. So I'd love to go into the depth of that, because I'm also here in Alberta, as you know. So a lot of my brothers, they've grown up as, I used to be in the Boilermaker, field, welded up in Fort McMurray. And a lot of the guys now are superintendents or project managers or, GMs in these major organizations. And I'm going to be sending this to them to, like, hey guys, let's get to work. So how can we now focus on really helping our brothers that are in the field to understand the importance of really bridging the existing flare stacks or what's going on in the refineries, so that we can then secure the network and really help us build out these nodes, stack, lightning, all of these components. And again, you'll explain it a lot better than I am. I'm just asking the question. So
so from and this is depending on where somebody is in their life cycle of understanding Bitcoin, that this is going to either relate or not relate. But Bitcoin, the mining specifically, is an economic action to try to make more money. And the only way you can make more money is having a lower energy cost than other people. So it's constantly chasing lower energy cost and I would say lower energy cost, meaning energy abundance. We have an abundance of energy on this planet. We don't have a pricing mechanism to capture it. And that includes flare gassing, because that's just abandoned energy that could be free energy to make a whole bunch of money. So if you don't have an economic capture, a free market capture, then people will cheat, and that gas will be vented into the sky, right? Because the economy requires the most efficient winds, and if you can cheat that system, or methane from landfill sites, nobody does that. Because there's no economic actor to be able to capture it. Well, now there's an economic actor that is completely incentive to scrape up and scrounge, and they could be located anywhere in the world, scrounge to be able to make more money from that wasted energy. And it creates energy abundance. And then the next cycle of that is use the heat from that to do power greenhouses or to power home. So you have a circular economy driven by the free market. that is chasing abundant energy. And in fact, I think I'm wearing it. I'm an investor in Gridless, the shirt, and I went to Africa to visit one of the Gridless sites. And I'm in Malawi in a place where people make $1 a day. And for the first time, they have electricity because of Bitcoin mining. Because Bitcoin mining acts as, and this isn't my analogy. This person built the analogy using my book, but I loved the analogy, and I wish I could. So if you're listening to this and it was you, call me, because I need to credit you each time. But Bitcoin's like, they used it as a bakery, right? And the baker throws out the bread at the end of the day that isn't bought. Then at the end of one day, somebody comes in and says, "I'll buy all your bread that you're throwing out. I just want a deal." And then the next day goes on. Are you sure you're going to buy it all? Everything you can make. So he makes more energy, more bread, and everything the Bitcoin miner buys and makes more, and forever will buy everything that you could overproduce. And so that's how you get to energy abundance, because then the market expands energy to be able to chase that. And so it also cleans up energy. It also cleans up the waste. So is anybody that's saying that Bitcoin is bad for the environment, when it's the only thing that possibly saves it, it's so staggering to me. You could actually say, really simply, inflation equals climate change, and that would be true, because it presupposes you could grow forever on a finite planet by manipulating currency to make everybody be on a mouse wheel to work harder and harder and harder, to work harder and harder. And you keep going forever on this Ponzi scheme by making more pieces of paper more available. Abundance and money equals scarcity everywhere. Scarcity and money equals abundance. So that process now gives a free market force to be able to go after energy. And if you're paying too much for your energy, you would never Bitcoin mine in the city, because you're paying too much for your energy, you'd go broke. So it's chasing this all over the world, and it doesn't care where it is. And that decentralizes the network. And then behind that, the nodes, like you probably run, I run, and people run all over the world, hold the rules in check and audit the blockchain every 10 minutes to say, is it doing what I agreed to in this process? So we hold the miners in check, and we constantly control that process. So it's an economic actor, and then the nodes control the network, and then and each incentive is kind of built upon. That's why it's so resilient. That's why it's so hard to shut down. It's impossible, because you can't find when China tried to shut this down many times, increasing penalties, there's still over 10% of the hash rate in China. You couldn't find these Bitcoin miners if you tried. They're off grid. So that wouldn't exist in a totalitarian state. And then holding those in check are all of our nodes. And now the bigger part of this is, once you and I know, and Gigi knows, and Jack Dorsey knows, and Alex Gladstein knows, and Preston Pysh knows, and Lyd Alden knows, and all of these people all over the world, and many more know the importance of decentralization and security in the future of the world. No way that's stopping. We're going to do every single attack vector that tries to do that, then it's like a cascade of all of these people making it more decentralized and secure. And you can prove this from the network hash rate. You can prove this from the decentralization. And you can see certain times, if you used mining pools as an example, that what if this happened? And so those mining pools which pay out to the concentrated against people, what would happen? And then there's massive entrepreneurial robustness, or making those more decentralized, making those more secure, so there's more options. And why does that exist? It exists because there's too many people, and there's a growing amount of people that know how important decentralization and security is for society moving forward, and they're not going back ever.
Beautiful, brother. This is it's so nice to see your clarity and focus, and just it's refreshing. And uh, again, when I told you, when I saw you on stage, or when we connected briefly, it was nice to really feel that level of integrity show up, not just in yourself, in the community as a whole. And it's like there's we're not talking here anymore. We're doing. And this is, to me, I think that it's been like driving me crazy, because there's so much stuff out there that people are just talking about, talking, having conversation. But what's happening behind the scenes? They're just talking more. They're not doing anything. And this is what I love, with like tremendous level of energy, because, and I believe that that's where the abundance, like we're inherently, this is our nature. We're abundant in our nature. We're abundant in our energy. It's infinite if it comes from a pure place. And that scarcity of hard money, I think, is something that, people are like, what do you mean? How does that come together? How does that abundance of our energy and that scarcity of money come together?
It comes together through the free. It comes together through the free market, because an entrepreneur can't make money unless he creates more value, or he or she can't create. And that value, the output of that value, is deflation. So that's actually why this is so important, because we don't know that that's true, because we measure it from a different system where that the output of that value increases prices everywhere. And the out or even if it doesn't increase prices, it increases control through the increase of prices elsewhere. It increases a control system over you, and most people have no idea. And so that is the connection in this system. And remember, it doesn't care what you think. If you want to take your Bitcoin and then convert it to your currency to price the world, it will look like Bitcoin's going up. If you actually realize what's happening, though, is all prices are falling forever against Bitcoin. That's the truth of what's happening. And I can prove this. You can, for anybody who's watching this, take Bitcoin price in Canada, take Bitcoin price in the US, take Bitcoin, and each time do it, take the max. So, and you'll see all the peaks and valleys in Bitcoin, and then take Bitcoin price in Argentina, and take Bitcoin price in Turkey, and take Bitcoin price in Egypt. And what you will see is there's a whole bunch of people in all of these countries that still believe in their paper units having value. But Bitcoin doesn't care. It's just a different relative value against Bitcoin in all of these currencies, and Bitcoin's repricing them all. Or you could say they are all failing at different rates to Bitcoin. And now if you take Bitcoin and you price your house, you'll see 4 years ago, this house that I'm in right now was for $1.4 million. Now it's $2.1 million. If I'm measuring in that piece of paper that's expanding all the time. If I'm measuring Bitcoin, the house went from 300 Bitcoin to 20 Bitcoin. And in the next 4 years, it'll fall to probably 2 Bitcoin. And so all things are falling to the marginal cost of production in Bitcoin. And it's not a guess. And so people are asking, when is it going to happen? It's happening. Right? Like it keeps happening, and it keeps happening. And your only choice is, when are you going to move over? And as you move over to it, you'll see, as you start to understand it, you'll see all of the productive members and what's coming together, and society coming together on this form, and which increases the speed of the rate of reduction, because you solve problems faster. And instead of misallocated capital everywhere and thinking that the government is solving all these problems, and you're solving problems faster, and that speed is as AI moves faster, as it moves into robotics, all of this abundance is flowing to you, and more people are joining the network as a result of it. So and that's what it creates, a real hard paradigm for people that are living in this other world and yelling at it and making it worse with all of their actions, whichever side of the debate they're debating on. And you can see, I do agree with you. I completely agree with you. I think what ends up happening in Bitcoin is it's a higher level of consciousness in society, because you're working on an honest layer. And that consciousness was always available. it was just harder to see. So if you just say, I think most religions, Buddha, Jesus, I think they actually came from a higher degree of consciousness that was always available to everybody, but people couldn't see it, and actually people transcribed through their own lens because it felt so good to be around those people, that it was those people that made them, where it was in all of us all the time. And that's what I think is happening. This is always in all of us. It's always been here. It's always, and it's just hard to see from a system that's stealing it from you.
I love you, bro. I just love you. I love you, man. Like, I love it. Like, I don't even have to say anything. It's just amazing because, like, this is, yesterday I had a conversation with a gentleman that has $2.1 billion in assets under management in the real estate, and I asked him this like question, and you just literally like outlined it so beautifully. Yeah, it's worth more in dollars, but that money is not as valuable. And it really is interesting because the more that I believe that we talk to these guys that are in private equity or in real estate and really open up their minds of this paradigm of what's possible, then we can really integrate more of the deflationary responsibility, and then also focus on not just securing the network, but also creating that understanding within people that, wait, this is actually something that you inherently are part of, and it's coming, and it's in benefit for your children and your children's children and the future of our responsibility here on earth. So
you literally, so we create the world we want to see. Yeah. And so when you're transacting on the Bitcoin network and you're moving more time on the Bitcoin network, you're running a node, you're spending more time on top of that. What you're literally doing is inscribing the best of us into a network for the best for all of us. That's what you're doing. All of your time is in service of that. Whether your time is doing a podcast that only one person starts to come down that path, whether that person, and you can never know how many people you touch. Just like there's no way I could thank all the people that touched my life to create me to where I am now. There's just no way. The emotion I felt on stage it's impossible because we are all of these interactions. We think we've always been this way, but we change over time by the people that impact us. So we can't even know how they impact us because we always thought it was our idea. So that same path that you're doing right now will impact people. You might have one person on your podcast that then goes and impacts millions of other people, and you have no idea that you were the insight that created that. So that's what I mean by inscribing that into the network, and you can't know, which is beautiful.
It takes away the redundancies too, because then you're almost collecting and communicating information in such an open way, and all of a sudden people are hearing something happening over here, you're being able to communicate effectively here, somebody hears from this person, and it's like, okay, let's create more solutions. And instead of focusing on the same problem and doing the solution, in Poland and Warsaw and here in Canada, we can, hey, Eric's doing that, and Pierre's doing that, and we can just come together and it's all on the same team. And I think that this is where the shift for me, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he said, I couldn't have grown without my community. Yeah. And I believe that all of us can't grow without, like, we can grow inherently within ourselves 100%, and like you said, we're all mirrors. I believe with 100% that all of us will grow so much more stronger when we are around a community that also thinks bigger. And this is what, from my perspective, the Bitcoin community is doing and is continuing to do and has done for such beautiful times. So I know we have to go, but I just wanted to thank you. And, I know you're investing in a lot of businesses, you're doing a lot of beautiful things, you're speaking on stage, creating events, you're really focused on this. And, from the bottom of my heart, brother, like it's really, thank you for your time, and I know that we'll get to spend more time together. If you had 3 days left to live, what would you do?
What I do right now. If everything ended tomorrow, I would do exactly what I'm doing now. I cannot believe I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not like I love everything. I love the people I meet. I love the things I do. If I didn't, I would do something else. I cannot believe I get to do what I get to do.
Your gift, my friend. If anybody wants to find out more information about you, the book, anything, where's the best place? Website?
Yeah, probably jeffbooth.ca. And the reason I say that specifically in the times we're moving into, things are going to get more and more chaotic, and there's so many scammers out there that create. So from that site, if you're following me on a social media site that is not listed on that site, I'll keep that updated all the time. And if it's not on that site, then it's not me. So probably that is the start. And if you wanted to follow me on social media, find the social media, find Noster's probably best. My pub key from that site.
Again, thank you, my brother. I'm very grateful. Anything else you want to add just before we end off?
No, just thank you very much. We'll do this again sometime. And I look forward to getting to know you even better.